It says live on YouTube.
Zoom does. Firefox still says it's setting up a meeting. Oh, it's working. I don't know, it's amazing. Okay, I don't know what happened, but I think Tim's idea might be right, that there was something weird about that video.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is amazing. Okay, so we're streaming. It is Thursday, December 26th. This is a meeting on Backdrop Outreach. To-do tasks for last week. Tim wrote a fantastic blog post about Backdrop's birthday party, so I wanted to say thank you to Tim. And I have been working on this GDPR consent checkbox thing for Backdrop. I tried to do it with MailChimp. Now we're not on MailChimp anymore. So there's a new service we're using called MailJet that provides a form with the right checkbox, which is up on backdropcms.org, but needs to get moved to the API site and the forum site, but not until after the new theme has been deployed or an updated version of the theme. And that feeds in a little bit to some to-do items for this week. There's a section here called Other Website Updates, where I want to add two of the things that Peter's been working on. One of them is fixing the way our showcase displays images that are not portrait orientation, that are landscape. They look funny on our landing page because it assumes that everything was taller than it was wide, and so it crops off the bottom. But if it's not taller, then it just leaves this whole blank space, which looks a little funny. So Darius recommended that we switch to a, I forget what it was called, a different kind of layout. I think it's called a mosaic, where everything just kind of fits together. And I think that's a good idea. Two questions. One of them would be, like, right now, I think the way the view is ordered, it's got the featured ones first, and then it has all of the non-featured ones, and they're ordered by post date or launch date or some date. And if we did a mosaic, I think like a actual mosaic layout sort of like swaps all of the orders around depending on like what screen size you're on and whatever else. I'm not sure that is necessary. I think what we just need to do is sort of fit things where they fit, so like stagger them somehow. And we might be able to do that with CSS alone, so that if everything was just like a block or I don't know, some kind of a flex display or something, it could kind of stack up where necessary. And then my other thought is, well, now that we're no longer limited by height, should we display the entire screenshot for those ones that are longer or currently cropped into squares? And that way we might get a little, because right now, like all of them are going to be square except for the two that are short, which means most of the time it would line up anyway, and every now and then it wouldn't, which might look weird as a mosaic. But then like one would make it offset, and then all the next would be offset until the next one, and then it would be offset different. But if we put in all of the random heights that they currently are, then we might get more of that original mosaic tile appearance. I don't know if that's worth worrying about. In theory, like maybe we should just build it and see what it looks like. If it's fine, we leave it alone, and if it's not, we can like change the image style or whatever. But that was a thought I had. I might add a comment there. But that issue is number 623. And I think we should definitely work on making the showcase show off things better. So if there's anything weird going on in the showcase, we should fix that. So thank you, Peter, for identifying that and trying to figure out how to change that. But I would love to see some improvement on that. I don't necessarily think that should block us launching the new theme on the other sites, but I was thinking that because we're working on it right now, it might end up getting in anyway. And then there's another thing too that we're working on right now, which is issue 564, which is, and this is open for discussion too, is on the footer right now, there's like a black box that is the block that has our contact form, and we have new styles going up for the contact form anyway, because the contact form is no longer a MailChimp form, it's now a MailJet form. So it could be useful to do this in the same code push. It right now is like the block itself has a black background, and so it fits inside the like container page. And a couple of people think that looks weird, and they would rather have the black box bleed off the side of one side of the page instead of stopping where the container stops. So instead of being a block with a background, it would just be like a weird half stripe on the bottom. And then that way it wouldn't, like, I think on some screen sizes, it looks weird to have like a white gutter on the side of that black area. So it makes sense if you're on a huge screen because you can tell the whole page is lined up, but on like a medium-sized screen where there's only a white border, it looks really weird. So trying to figure out how to handle that. And then bigger picture, when we come up with design changes, I know that like there's I'm not a designer, so I solve my design changes with logic, which sometimes does not work aesthetically. And so I'm like, oh, well, logic, you know, obviously container thing inside container makes sense, must be beautiful, right? But people are like, no, it doesn't work that way. But I also know that from speaking to designers, if you start tweaking things in the design, like without the big picture overview of like what the goal is for the design, it can get really weird. Like you can't just keep changing little thing and expect it to be the same at the end as it was at the beginning. But we don't have a like workflow built in place for this. And we have a bunch of issues where we're sort of designing by consensus, which sometimes ends up with like the worst result rather than the one the original designer had. And so I don't know if we should have like 3 or 4 people that are designed as like design authorities that get the final say on an issue like that. It should not be me, for one, because I don't understand design. But I know that we have 2 people that have worked on design for our sites. Darius did the original design and all of our branding for backdropcms.org, so the Borg theme, and he would be someone I would lean to for that. In this particular case, we needed help with the block in a pinch, and we got Nika Lorbert to come up with a design for how to highlight that, which I think was Tim's recommendation. We could defer to her. We could also promote anyone from our community who is a designer, wants to be responsible for making calls on stuff like this, to be able to come in and be like, or maybe not, it just don't have to be a designer. It has to have design sensibility to be able to make the final call, so that we can come in and be like, does this disrupt the overall feeling of our site? Does it affect the brand? Is it gonna, like, I don't know. Well, those big questions that aren't answered by logic, someone should be able to say like, this change is fine, it's not going to change anything, or like this change ruins everything, like changing the font or something like that probably might have an effect like that. So then that started me thinking, this is one of these things. Yesterday I was painting the house, and so when you look at an issue and then you go do something that's not related, your brain is like, well, painting the house isn't hard, so my brain's just going to think about how we're going to handle design issues in the future. So big question here is, how do we handle these issues? Do we continue to solve them by consensus? Do we create a design authority? Do we continue to reach out to the original designers, or do we like sort of set up a team of everybody who has looked at all of our brand documentation, understands the big goal, and is willing to make these answers? Also, I don't think this question is blocking that change. So completely separate. Maybe we'll create another issue that's like, by the way, how do we solve this? And then we could come up with a way that as a community, we can figure out how to make design decisions. But I don't know, if we can get one of the current people we have, I think also Wes should be a design authority on the basis theme. So anytime we make any design decisions about like background color on the page shell or something, it would be good to bring him in and be like, is this true to the original intent of the theme? So and then when we do have those people selected, we should have that documented somewhere, like on the backdropcms.org website. We have this leadership section where we've started to document like who's on the bug squad. We might have another page there for design leadership and call out these people that are responsible for making design decisions and what they are responsible for. So like Wes might not want to be responsible for everything we're doing on backdropcms.org, but he's probably fine to do basis. And then I know Darius is probably happy to help with backdropcms.org and maybe even like backdrop internal user interface stuff, because he helped with our style guide there, but maybe he doesn't want to do basis. So just kind of getting some kind of feel there for like when we have an issue that we're not sure how to proceed on, or if there's some kind of disagreement that needs to be escalated in one way or another, we can just say, ask X person, and that should be documented in a place that everybody can look at that and say, X person in this case is Wes or whoever. So Luke, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but Peter, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or if you can talk to it right now. But that was all
I
of
mean,
the rattling that went through my head yesterday.
it sounds like a design meeting kind of question as opposed to an outreach meeting kind of
How
question.
about, so yeah, it's only tangentially related because it's the newsletter sign up block, which is outreach related. But how about I push this entire discussion into our next design agenda, and then we can talk about it there. And maybe I can create an issue ahead of time so people can add a comment. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'll always philosophically push for an individual to have creative control as opposed to a committee, but you know.
Or even, so the one thing I want to avoid with an individual is like end up getting blocked on something. If you have like 10 developers who can implement it and the one person who's the design authority isn't available, like this week, for example, it's a holiday week and developers have sometimes time and maybe that designer is otherwise occupied. So having at least 2 people on each, I think would be good. But I agree, a committee or the entire community might not be the best source for determining whether something is still like on brand, especially if the entire community hasn't read like brand documentation stuff. So I'm not sure this is something that matters as far as like big picture brand stuff, but just general thoughts. Okay.
I mean, it seems like it can be handled the same way that, you know, technical design decisions are, that whoever happens to be boots on the ground on a given day feels empowered to do stuff, but you know, there's an overall organization structure just in case it has to be reined in for whatever reason. But if it doesn't, then it doesn't.
Okay, so anyone
you want to avoid blockers though, right?
And then that just gets reviewed by somebody who can say, yes, this is better, or no, it isn't, or something. Okay, I think that's fair. Okay, that's also good because then if you have someone who only has like 10 minutes of time, they can look at a sandbox or a screenshot or something and be able to say, yes, this is better than that, and not have to worry about like reading the whole discussion of back and forth logic versus aesthetic, which is usually what happens in these issues if I get involved.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a note here. Design meeting, discuss design, what did I call them? Authorities. Okay. So more related to outreach. What should we be talking about on social media right now? I think the backdrop birthday party might be good. If there are any events in January, I don't know if there are.
Do we make a bigger deal out of the releases that fall on the anniversary of, like the yearly status markers for a release?
Yeah, so that's the whole birthday party thing where usually we have, it's like a celebration where we do it in person. We're like, hey, Backdrop is 6 years old and the new version just came out. We're gonna have a thing and anyone who wants to see it can like play with it, or we'll just talk about it or whatever. And usually what happens is we try to get that release done earlier in the day. Like sometimes our releases come out at like midnight Hawaii time. We're trying to get as much as we can in there. But on a like release birthday, we sometimes try and get it done by like 4 so that we can go be at the party at like 6 or something. And then that way we have a little more time to do the celebrating. And
well, I'm just thinking like there are lots of positives as you know to our kind of incremental release pieces that aren't like major rewrites of the whole thing. But one of the things from the outreach perspective that naturally sort of deprives us of is the big major version number announcement where you can get the push. So I'm wondering if it might make sense to kind of manufacture that to sort of like say like, okay, what happened over the last year, and kind of like roll things together.
I love it.
And kind of like filter out like the bug fixes and the things, and just be like, look, this is the thing that we have this year is better than the thing we had a year ago because of this, and this, and better than the thing we had 2 years ago. So give sort of a bigger picture view to the show's forward movement.
Yeah. I would love that. So I think that we could do that in a couple of different ways. Like if we come up with this content that's like what happened over the last year, that could be a blog post, that could go into a newsletter. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of places we could use that, little bits on Twitter.
Well, I mean, I have the perspective since I drop out occasionally and come back in. I'm like, oh, look at all this great new stuff, and like everyone else is like, oh yeah, that's like weeks old. That's old news. I'm like,
but I didn't see it until now. I mean, sometimes
yeah,
that
yeah,
happens to me where
yeah,
like I'll miss a new feature that gets in and then Nate will like demo it later and I'm like, this is so cool. So yeah, I mean, it happens to all of us.
yeah. I did a Git pull and suddenly I have a dashboard. It's so cool.
Yep.
So I think that would be, just my own personal view. That would be high on the list. Like dashboard. Look at this great admin friendly, informative interface that we have
Can
now.
we talk you into writing this piece of
Yes,
content?
yes, you can.
Yay. Okay, thank you.
So what I just commit to, I'm writing the yearly summary. All right, no,
Yeah,
fine,
it could
sure,
be
sure.
in a blog post format or just like content that we can then reuse to make a blog post format. But I would
Yeah.
love you to do it as a blog post because then you like get your name on it and everything.
Yeah. And I can personalize this. I don't have to like keep things out. I can, I'm happy to talk about me. So I'll do that. And then having like, spewed the raw material, we can freely pull from that to make any kind of other like, less
That sounds
personal marketing
amazing.
materials that sound, yeah. All right, I'll do it.
Thank you. Okay, and then I'm going to put pull from blog post as tweet things we can do. Maybe not this week, but whenever that gets done. There's also videos. If anyone wants to make videos about Backdrop, we would love to add them to our YouTube channel. If you can mention us somewhere when you create it so that we know, or post it in, write a blog post or post it in Gitter, or just let somebody know who can add it to the YouTube channel. That would be great. Virtual user group. I know, Luke, yours is January 6th-ish.
Something like that.
Okay.
Or early January is how I have it in my site. It's probably on my calendar.
And is that on moving content?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, getting, the state of getting content in and out of Backdrop is the subject area that I'm taking on.
Okay. And then in February, I would like to do, I've volunteered to do a virtual user, or not an in-person user group in San Francisco in March, specifically on moving from Drupal to Backdrop. And I would love to do that presentation as a virtual user group ahead of time to see what kind of questions I can get. And then if I can put those into the presentation for in-person, that would be great. So Tim's not here. I will ask him about that offline.
Mm-hmm.
And then other stuff we have, events. There's a bunch of events on our events page. The only one in January is the virtual user group meetup. Newsletter. I think our next newsletter will probably be end of January, but if we have that year in review thing at the beginning of January, the end of December, that would also be something we could send out ahead of time. We can use MailJet if we need to. Yeah, that's it for everything that's on the agenda. So that's good because it's time to end the meeting of all of our testing to get it running again. I'm glad we did that. But yeah, let's go ahead and wrap up this meeting. And in 2 minutes, we'll start our weekly developer meeting.
All right. Another Outlook meeting, another commitment I've made.
Thank you, Luke.
All right. Bye-bye.